The day of Percy's and Lizzie's wedding dawned bright and clear, the first rays of sunlight casting a rosy hue across the morning sky, promising that the summer solstice of 1821 would be either pleasantly warm or more likely unbearably sweltering. As Prudence slipped through the kitchen door, she gave only the briefest of glances to the blaze of orange and gold decorating the horizon, as she attempted to juggle a pilfered but unexpectedly hot scone in one hand and tie the laces to her dress with the other. It was only 6 a.m., but already the vicarage cook, Mrs. Tomlinson, had produced a mouth-watering profusion of pastries, cooked meats, and a multitude of other luxuries for the wedding. It was also very likely that many of the tempting treats on display would contain traces of her tears, and possibly even a smidgen of snot, since Mrs. Tomlinson had been crying almost non-stop for the last 3 days. Indeed, so impressive were the cook's waterworks, one could be forgiven for thinking that Blackmore's curate was moving to another country rather than 200 yards down the road. Prudence's reason for being out of her bed at such an ungodly hour was predictably to avoid all the tumult that such a momentous occasion was even now provoking. Of course, when she sweetly requested that she be the one to pick the flowers for Lizzie's bouquet, there were more than a few raised eyebrows, not to mention sniggers from the rest of the family, given that her knowledge of wildflowers had hitherto been confined to be able to spot the difference between a dandelion and a daisy. To be fair on Prudence, she'd spent at least 20 minutes the night before looking at pictures of wildflowers she'd found inside her father's copy of Gilbert White's Natural History of Selborne. She wasn't quite sure where Selborne was, but reasoned it couldn't be that different to Blackmore, as the first 3 illustrations she'd studied were wild cowslips, cornflowers, and poppies. She decided that the bride's bouquet would contain wild cowslips, cornflowers, and poppies. All she had to do was find them. And, as she popped the last piece of scone in her mouth, she determined to make her errand last at least 3 hours, returning just in time to tie a ribbon around the bouquet and hand it to the bride. Allowing another 20 minutes to get back to the vicarage and change her attire, she would be ready just before the ceremony was due to begin. With luck, everyone else would be in church. Perfect. Well, it was until she found herself on the other side of the village with a grand total of 3 bedraggled poppies with only an hour and a half to go. Surely Gilbert White hadn't found it this bloody difficult to find a few cowslips and cornflowers. Damn and blast, she muttered, secure in the knowledge that she was well out of her father's hearing. With an irritated sigh, she sat down at the side of the rutted track and stared into the distance. The only noise was the soft cooing of a wood pigeon. The early morning chill had lifted, and she felt the warmth on her back with the promise of more to come. Wincing, she thought of the church, filled to bursting with the whole of Blackmore. It would undoubtedly be more than a little ripe by the end of the ceremony, since there was no way any of the villagers would miss the wedding of their only curate, especially given the scandal that accompanied the bride and groom's initial courtship. It was whispered that Lizzie's first husband had actually still been alive at the time. Prudence chuckled. If only they knew the half of it.